It's 100 years since Kevin Barry was executed in Mountjoy Prison. His was the first prison execution by the British government in Ireland since the 1916 Rising. Kevin was as calm and brave in those final days as he was during his time on active service with the IRA's Dublin Brigade fighting for Irish freedom. With great pride, we remember Kevin, just 18 years old when he died, and all who lost their lives in the struggle for independence. They are our inspiration as we work for a new, united Ireland and a true republic. This video is a tribute to Kevin Barry.
Millions of people pass through this Temple Bar area of Dublin every year. It's visited by people from all over the world. Here in Fleet Street, on a house, now number 10, it was number 8, there is a plaque which commemorates the birth of Kevin Barry. He was born here in January 1902, and his family had a dairy business on this street. They also had a dairy farm near Rathvilly, County Carlow. So Kevin was brought up between the streets of Dublin and the farms and fields of County Carlow. He enjoyed his time in the country, and when he came of age he went to Belvedere College. But he always retained his links with Carlow, and in fact in the last summer of his life he actually assisted the IRA Carlow Brigade when he was in that county in the summer of 1920, the last summer of his life. In 1916, Kevin Barry started school here in Belvedere College, and he was a very intelligent student, very bright young man, and he was only a year in Belvedere, 1917, when he joined the Irish Volunteers, joined the Dublin Brigade of the Irish Republican Army. He was a very thoughtful young man. He had seen the Dublin lockout, he had seen the 1916 Rising, the death of Thomas Ashe and hunger strike, and we have a number of the essays that he wrote while he was here. He wrote an essay on prejudice, and in it he talked about racial prejudice. He says, "It usually masks a much worse thing, oppression or tyranny. It is also divided into two classes, namely that of the white man against his coloured brother, for brother he is, whether black, red or yellow, and that of the white man against his fellow white man of a different nation. The two combined form the origin of very many of the world's greatest wars and slaughter." And as I say, he lived through the 1913 lockout, and in another essay on trade unionism and strikes, he talked about the Great Dublin Lockout of 1913, and he said, "The men held out doggedly till they won, or virtually won, since the tramway union was recognised. Thus we received a forcible demonstration of the power of labour, and had an experience also of an agitator in the person of that marvellous leader James Larkin and his able lieutenant Commandant James Connolly." While Kevin was in Belvedere College, he played rugby. He played on the first team. He was a very accomplished rugby player, and he was also a hurler. He was involved in the newly formed hurling club in Belvedere and was actually secretary of that club. So he certainly made his mark here. And when he graduated from Belvedere, he went to University College Dublin, where he studied medicine. At that time, the student population would have been very small compared to today, but there were quite a number of students in UCD who were involved with the Dublin Brigade of the IRA, including Kevin and his very good friend Frank Flood. Frank was involved in the Church Street ambush, which led to Kevin's arrest. And later, in 1921, Frank took part in the foiled Drumcondra ambush and was himself captured and eventually executed in Mountjoy Jail. In 1920, the King's Inns behind me here was occupied by the British Army, and it contained a large store of weapons. So the Dublin Brigade of the IRA decided that they would raid the building to capture the arms. And there was a team of volunteers selected, and Kevin Barry was among that team. It was on the 1st of June 1920 that the raid took place. Now, security was fairly lax here. On the green that you see, the British soldiers courted their girlfriends, and it was a public park, so there were people coming in and out. So the volunteers went into the park as if they were ordinary citizens enjoying the park, but they had concealed weapons, and they gradually moved closer to the gate. And then when the moment came, they rushed the guards on the gate, and led by Kevin Barry, they went into the building, went to the guard room and captured a large haul of rifles, ammunition and machine guns. And one of the volunteers, who later described the raid, had the picture of Kevin Barry coming out of the building with a Lewis machine gun in his arms, and he said to Dennis Holmes, who told the story later, "Look, Dinny, look what I've got," with a big smile on his face. And it was one of the most successful arms raids that the Dublin Brigade carried out during the Black and Tan War. On 20th of September 1920, the event took place here, which led to the arrest and the eventual execution of Kevin Barry. There was a plan by the Dublin Brigade, 1st Battalion, of which Kevin was a member, to surprise a section of the British Army which came here to Church Street to Monk's Bakery to collect bread for the garrison. Their garrison was based in Collinstown Camp, which is now Dublin Airport. And they arrived here at 11:30 a.m. on that morning. The idea was to collect the bread, go back to the camp. There was a lorry load of British soldiers. One of the sergeants went into the bakery, followed by a private, to collect the bread. They were then surprised by volunteers who approached them with weapons and ordered them to drop their weapons. The idea was actually to capture the weapons of the British Army, but a firefight broke out almost immediately, and as a result of that, a British soldier was killed outright. Another two were severely wounded and died later. The action took a very short time. Most of the volunteers managed to withdraw safely, but Kevin Barry, when the firefight was on, and to avoid capture, he had to roll under one of the British Army lorry. He wasn't spotted initially by the British Army, but the truck was about to move away, and a woman who witnessed the scene spotted Kevin Barry under the lorry, and she thought that the lorry would run over him and kill him. So she shouted out, "There's a boy under the lorry, watch the boy under the lorry." And as a result of that, the British Army realised he was there and he was arrested. The woman acted purely out of concern for Kevin's life. Sadly, some people blamed her later for the capture of Kevin Barry, but she was simply, to him, he was simply a boy who was in danger of being killed by the lorry. So Kevin was captured, he was roughly treated, and he was taken then to the North Dublin Union. When Kevin was captured, he was taken to the North Dublin Union, which was British Army barracks at the time. It's better known as Grange Gorman, and it's now the Technical University of Dublin. He was taken here and he was very roughly treated. The Lancashire Regiment was the British Army regiment. He was taken into a room by 3 sergeants, and he was threatened with a bayonet, that they would run a bayonet through him. They demanded the names of his unit, those who were involved in the attack at Mugg's Bakery in Church Street. He refused to cooperate, he refused to give them any names. Again, he was threatened with a bayonet. They threw him onto the floor. 3 soldiers kneeled on top of him, threatened to kill him. His arm was twisted up his back, and his arm was badly injured from that. But Kevin Barry steadfastly refused to reveal any names. He gave only his name, his rank, and his membership of the Irish Republican Army. Kevin was subsequently court-martialled by the British Army in Marlborough Barracks, which is now McKee Barracks near the Phoenix Park. Martial law was in effect, so the British Commander-in-Chief in Ireland, Macready, he selected 9 British Army officers, and they constituted his court-martial. He was court-martialled on the 20th of October 1920. The so-called trial lasted only a day. He refused to cooperate in any way. In fact, during some of the trial, he actually sat reading a newspaper. He said that, as a soldier of the Irish Republic, I refuse to recognise the court. The court took very short time to deliberate, and that very evening, in his cell in Mountjoy, he was told that the court had found him guilty and the sentence was death. And later, the date of execution was fixed for the 1st of November. The British government refused all appeals for Kevin Barry's life, and the execution was to go ahead. Ellis, the hangman, was brought over from England to carry out that execution. We can only imagine the sense of helplessness here in Dublin, particularly among his Republican comrades, as the hour approached and the dreaded day approached. There were in fact a number of plans to rescue Kevin Barry from Mountjoy Jail, but they were abandoned because they would have led probably to the death of many other volunteers. One of the plans was to actually place a landmine against the wall of the prison, but they had to be abandoned. So Kevin had his last visit with his family. There were a number of reports later that he had given various different messages, last messages, but the only message he gave was, when asked by a priest if he had anything to say, he said, "The only message I have to anybody is, hold on and stick to the Republic." And so on that morning at 6 a.m. on the 1st of November, thousands of people gathered outside Mountjoy Jail, led by Cumann na Món. They prayed, they sang hymns and patriotic songs, but mostly they waited in silence for the hour 8 a.m. when Kevin was due to be executed. One of the chaplains who was with him said that he went to the scaffold with perfect bravery, and exactly at 8 a.m. he was executed, and the notice was pinned on the door of Mountjoy Prison that the deed had been done. And his execution caused consternation, but also inspiration for so many people. His bravery, his youth, the fact that he went to his death as a volunteer who was prepared to play his part in the struggle for freedom, and if necessary to give his life. And he inspired many more young Republicans to become part of that struggle and, in his own words, to stick to the Republic.
In Mountjoy jail on Monday morning.
I uphold the gallows tree.
Kevin Barry gave us young life.
For the cause of liberty.
In Mountjoy jail one Monday morning, high upon the gallows tree, Kevin Barry gave his young life for the cause of liberty. But a lad of 18 summers, still there's no one can deny, as he walked to death that morning, he proudly held his head on high. Just before he faced the hangman in his dreary prison cell, the black and tans, they tortured Barry just because he would not tell the names of all of his companions and other things they wished to know. Turn informer or we'll kill you, Kevin Barry answered no. Another martyr for old Ireland, another murder for the crown, whose brutal laws to crush the Irish couldn't keep our spirits down. Lads like Barry are no cowards, from the foe they will not fly. Lads like Barry will free Ireland, for her sake they'll live